Hi guys, I wanted to talk to you about the role of cholesterol in the body because so many people are afraid of it. In the last few decades, cholesterol has been made into a boogeyman as a result of medical propaganda vilifying this very important compound. Statin use has skyrocketed, making cholesterol-lowering drugs some of the most commonly prescribed medications. In the US alone, more than 35 million people are taking them. If you go to a doctor and get medical checkups, then you know that your physician cares very much about your cholesterol levels and is always aiming to bring them down. Now, I don't know if this is because doctors don't fully understand what causes high cholesterol or if they simply don't care. But by trying to artificially lower cholesterol production, they're actually putting their patients at a greater risk of more serious health problems. If you follow Dr. Morse, then you probably heard him say repeatedly that cholesterol is the body's natural defense against acids, which is true. But you may not be aware of the full spectrum of its specific functions or the mechanism behind them. First, let's talk about what is cholesterol. Cholesterol is a waxy substance that is found in all of our cells and which is necessary for many functions within the body. Another word for cholesterol is lipoprotein. So, is it a fat or is it a protein? Well, it's both. You see, fat cannot be carried through the blood because, as you already know, oil and water don't mix. So the only way this lipid can be transported through the blood is if it's enclosed in a water-soluble protein coating. This protein coating can be either of low or high density, which is what differentiates LDL from HDL, where LDL stands for low-density lipoprotein and HDL stands for high-density lipoprotein. Both have the same exact material inside, and their outer coating is the only thing that sets them apart. Well, that and the fact that LDL is considered to be bad, whereas HDL is considered to be good. There's also something called VLDL, or very low density lipoprotein, which is another so-called bad cholesterol. The difference between the structure of LDL and VLDL is the proportion or the ratio of cholesterol, triglycerides, and protein. LDL contains more cholesterol, whereas VLDL contains more triglycerides. Of course, triglycerides and cholesterol are both lipids, but they differ in their structure and function. While cholesterol is essential for building cells and many types of hormones, triglycerides store unused calories by turning them into body fat. In fact, VLDL is the body's main source of energy during fasting. Another difference is that cholesterol is made in the intestines and the liver, while triglycerides are made exclusively in the liver. The reason I'm bringing up this very low density lipoprotein is that I have a personal theory that there is a correlation between high VLDL and the formation of lipomas. Remember that lipids are antacids. You know that when you eat something that's really hot and spicy, or if you have acid reflux, the best way to soothe that burn is to drink something that's either chalky, like over-the-counter antacids Pepto or Mylanta, or something fatty. I remember when I was little and I accidentally ate a very hot pepper. I was given a glass of full-fat milk, and it did work very quickly to soothe my irritated mucosa. So our body does the same. It either deploys the calcium buffering mechanism or it starts producing lipids to shield and insulate our cells from the burn of acids. So far, I have not found any specific medical studies that link VLDL to lipomas directly, even though high triglyceride levels are frequently seen in the same conditions that are associated with lipoma development. What I did find, however, is that lipomas have been linked to specific gene mutations. And what causes our cells to mutate? Well, sustained damage from acidic cellular waste, stress, radiation, and toxins, whether these are environmental or chemical. What I can tell you is that ever since I've been doing iridology, I have seen lipomas and high cholesterol in people who are highly acidic and have a significant number of genetic weaknesses combined with lymphatic stagnation. We know that low HDL is an indicator of poor liver function, especially when it's combined with high LDL. But I don't want to spend too much time on VLDL here. I only wanted to mention it in the context of lipomas because that is something that I see a lot of people dealing with. And also because there is a connection between VLDL and LDL cholesterol. VLDL that's produced in the liver distributes its triglycerides to the tissues where it matures into LDL. In other words, baby VLDLs grow up to be LDLs. How this works is that our cells extract the fatty acids from VLDL, decreasing its triglyceride ratio, which then proportionally increases the cholesterol ratio. And voila, VLDL becomes LDL. But whether we're talking about VLDL, LDL, or HDL, these labels aren't so fixed and are subject to change because cholesterol is a bit of a shapeshifter. Even though there are different varieties of cholesterol that come in different shapes and sizes that are specific to each type's designated tasks, they also have the ability to morph from one form into another. Now, LDL is known as the bad cholesterol because higher LDL rates indicate a higher risk of heart disease. But being an indicator of something bad doesn't equal being bad. In conventional medical thinking, high-density lipoprotein is considered good cholesterol because it carries the so-called bad cholesterol out of the arteries back to the liver. And in doing so, it protects the heart. But designating one lipoprotein as good and the other as bad simply because of their direction in the body is kind of nonsensical. I read this one article where the author compared this to ambulance transport. He said that it's like calling an ambulance that goes from the hospital to the patient a bad ambulance, and the one traveling from the patient back to the hospital a good ambulance. Now, the reason LDL is considered to be bad lipoprotein is because it carries cholesterol to the arteries, where it may build up in the vascular walls and thus contribute to plaque formation, known as atherosclerosis. And this can restrict blood flow to the heart and leg muscles, causing coronary artery disease or peripheral artery disease, respectively. Arteriosclerosis can also lead to an abrupt closure of an artery, either in the heart or the brain, resulting in a heart attack or a stroke. But this idea that cholesterol is bad comes from the misplaced notion that views it as the cause rather than the effect of the problem. Only 20% of total cholesterol in the body comes from food, while the rest of it is manufactured internally. Of course, that number is based on the diet that includes animal products, so I would assume that it's way, way lower than that in vegans. Although the commonly accepted understanding is that the majority of cholesterol is produced exclusively by the liver, numerous studies have shown that the bulk tissues, meaning our muscles, account for the overwhelming majority of endogenous cholesterol production. In fact, cholesterol is made in every single nucleated cell of the body, and that only leaves out our platelets and our red blood cells. Furthermore, the latest research indicates that hepatic, meaning liver synthesis of cholesterol, accounts for only 10 to 20% of the total daily production. Other sites of significant synthesis are the intestines, the brain, the adrenal glands, and our reproductive organs. The importance of liver, however, is that it controls the amount of cholesterol in the blood at any given time. All the cholesterol that's made in the peripheral tissues on a daily basis, which is roughly 9 milligrams per kilo, has to be moved to the liver for catabolism via a process called reverse cholesterol transport. The liver also manufactures bile and other chemical compounds from cholesterol, which include vitamin D, cortisol, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. The amazing intelligence of the body is such that it senses how much cholesterol is circulating in the system, and if too much is coming in from the food, then the body automatically reduces its in-house production to keep the balance. So the question then is this: if the body has this built-in self-regulating mechanism in place to monitor its cholesterol levels and can adjust its production accordingly, then why do people still end up with high cholesterol? Why does the body keep making it even when it already has too much? You know, when I was having health issues and I was working with an orthomolecular naturopath, orthomolecular means supplement-based, he wanted me eating 21 eggs and nearly 9 pounds of meat weekly. When I think about it now, it's mind-blowing. Now, even back then, I felt it was too much, so I told him I can't eat that much meat. But he continued to insist that it was the only way I could get my hair back, because hair and muscle require the so-called structural proteins. So he put me on this insane protocol, which called for 7 ounces of meat morning, day, and night, and a ton of supplements. And then he would draw my blood every 2-3 months to monitor my progress. But instead of progress, he kept seeing my cholesterol going up higher, higher, and higher. And he was stumped because he couldn't understand why this was happening. Now, you're probably going to say that it was all that meat and eggs that are high in cholesterol to begin with. But remember, if we have too much coming in from external sources, the body will automatically make less internally. Besides, if you consider that the amount of cholesterol we get from food accounts for such a small percentage of the total amount, getting less of it from the diet isn't going to be enough to make a difference. So what gives? Now, you might think that the obvious culprit here would be the liver. After all, it's the liver's job to monitor cholesterol levels. And it's true that if the liver is not healthy, it's not going to do a very good job of regulating cholesterol or anything else that it's supposed to do. But if you stop there, then you're missing the bigger picture, because focusing solely on the liver only scratches the surface of a much more complex systemic issue. You see, when cholesterol is higher than what is considered normal, the assumption is that the body is malfunctioning by making more than it should. But that's not true, is it? Because we know that the body isn't stupid. So if it's making all this extra cholesterol, then it must have a reason for it. It must need it for something. What most doctors don't seem to know is that cholesterol is an antioxidant. And what do antioxidants do? Well, gee, they protect cells from damage by free radicals. So, if the body keeps pumping out cholesterol beyond normal levels, then it's doing so to protect cellular structures from damage. And what side of chemistry damages cells? Acids, of course. So before you blame the liver, you should ask what would cause the liver to not perform its functions correctly. It's either cellular damage or lymphatic suppression. And of course, lymphatic stagnation inevitably leads to tissue breakdown, sooner or later. The only distinction here is whether this tissue weakness is inherent or acquired through poor diet and lifestyle choices. The biggest concern among doctors is the cholesterol that accumulates in the vascular walls. The question is, why does cholesterol build up in the arteries? The reason for this is that when acids pull calcium out of connective tissue, they weaken and break down the structure of the blood vessels, creating microfissures. And so the body uses cholesterol molecules to plug those tiny holes. Because let's face it, if your blood vessels are leaking, you are not going to be here for very long. Of course, the more extensive the damage and the resulting inflammation, the more cholesterol the body will need to deal with the problem. Trouble is that these fatty deposits, combined with the calcium, create calcified plaque that ends up thickening and narrowing the arterial walls. This narrowing reduces the blood flow and forces the heart to pump harder, subsequently increasing the pressure on the already damaged vascular structures, which of course can result in ruptures. And ruptures in the blood vessels produce blood clots that can lead to strokes and heart attacks. So cholesterol is made out to be the villain and the cause of the problem, when in reality, all it does is try to protect the vascular system. But LDL is used to repair damaged tissues all over the body, because as a part of our cell membranes, cholesterol fortifies cellular structure and creates a protective barrier within the membrane and organelles, making our cells more resistant to invasion from pathogens and protecting them from toxic material. Even healthy blood vessels incorporate a layer of cholesterol and saturated fat to make them stronger and more rigid so that they can withstand the pressure and turbulence of blood flow. As important building blocks, cholesterol and saturated fats give our cells their shape by making them firm. Since our bodies are made of trillions of these cells, if it weren't for cholesterol, we would probably look like jello or giant slugs. Cholesterol also plays a role in cell communications, which are carried out by the proteins embedded in the cellular membranes. By forming the so-called lipid rafts, cholesterol keeps these proteins securely attached to the cell wall. So whenever we have a problem in our body, the liver releases cholesterol into the bloodstream, and it is then dispatched to whatever areas require patching. One of the reasons cholesterol is absolutely necessary for healing is that healing requires creation, growth, proliferation, and proper function of certain types of cells. These would be immune cells and endothelial cells. Since most cells, to some extent, are made out of cholesterol and fats, they cannot form and grow without a good supply of these substances. Therefore, when cells become damaged, they require cholesterol and fats to repair themselves. When we get injured or have surgery, where our tissues are cut and there are many small arteries and veins and capillaries that get damaged as a result, the liver will flood the body with LDL cholesterol to clean up and heal every little wound in our blood vessels. Another vital role of cholesterol is defending the body against infections. Multiple studies have shown that toxins produced by most pathogenic staph strains are almost entirely deactivated by LDL. And this explains why blood cholesterol increases after injuries or surgical procedures. Additionally, low blood cholesterol has been linked to fewer circulating lymphocytes and T cells when compared to subjects with high LDL. It has also been found that those with low cholesterol levels are more susceptible to infections, whereas those who have high cholesterol are 4 times less likely to contract AIDS, they rarely get colds, and they recover from infections much more quickly than people with normal or low blood cholesterol. What this tells us is that cholesterol is a healing agent that gets mobilized when the body is in need of healing. What's interesting, though, is that once the job is done, that excess cholesterol is sent back to the liver, returning its systemic levels to normal. If you consider this mechanism, it is not at all unusual to have fluctuating levels of cholesterol. For instance, it goes up in winter and goes down in the summer. It also goes up when we're stressed, but is normal when we are relaxed. We only see permanently high blood cholesterol levels in cases of chronic or ongoing inflammation where the body is suffering continuous damage. So when you have your cholesterol levels checked, you need to put these numbers into proper perspective because your cholesterol can be high today due to a cold or a low-level fungal infection, and then go back to normal the following week. The protective qualities of cholesterol also extend to the brain, which contains as much as 25% of the total body cholesterol. Not only is it an important part of the brain structure, but it also provides nourishment and protection that extends to the rest of the nervous system as well. What's more is that the composition of the myelin sheaths, which play an important role in communication between neurons, is 20% cholesterol. Myelin coats every nerve cell and every nerve fiber like the insulating cover around electric wires. What it does is it increases the rate at which electrical impulses are passed along the axons. I'm sure you're aware that myelin loss leads to a number of neurodegenerative diseases like multiple sclerosis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, Charcot-Marie-Tooth, and many others. Additionally, the formation of brain synapses is entirely dependent on a particular cholesterol that's synthesized by the brain cells, which is called apolipoprotein E. Considering that synapses are necessary for learning, memory, and cognition, it's no surprise that one of the side effects of cholesterol-lowering drugs is the decline in cognitive function. Some research even links higher levels of LDL with lower risks for damaged blood vessels and changes in the brain's white matter, which is a predictor of stroke and dementia. As a vital component of the brain structure that's necessary for a multitude of functions, cholesterol is extremely important to the developing brain and eyes of the fetus, as well as newborn infants. Babies' developing brains require large amounts of cholesterol. And if you look at the composition of breast milk, you'll find that it's fairly high in cholesterol and contains a special enzyme that allows nearly 100% of that cholesterol to be absorbed by the baby's digestive tract. Not enough cholesterol in infancy can result in poor eyesight and impaired brain function. Cholesterol also plays a major role in endocrine health because all of our hormones are made from it. And that's why when we are stressed, our cholesterol levels go up. You see, stress initiates fight or flight response, triggering cortisol production. And cortisol is our stress management hormone. Now, of course, cortisol is made from cholesterol. So the higher the stress, the more cortisol is needed to mitigate its deleterious effects. And the higher the need for cortisol, the more cholesterol will be sent by the liver to the adrenal glands to meet this demand. Additionally, stress releases a storm of free radicals and other damaging biochemical reactions that require the help of cholesterol to deal with these assaults. But endocrine connection is a two-way street here, because thyroid also plays a role in regulating cholesterol levels. Thyroid hormone T3 is responsible for the removal of excess cholesterol from the blood. So if our thyroid is underactive, or there's a problem with conversion of T4 into its active form T3, then the body is going to have a harder time clearing out the superfluous cholesterol. On the flip side, hyperthyroidism, where there's too much T3, can lead to abnormally low cholesterol levels. And low cholesterol is implicated in insufficient hormone production, as well as mental, emotional, and behavioral issues such as aggression, suicidal tendency, and compulsion. Now, this makes sense because if you don't have enough cholesterol, you can't make neurotransmitters and hormones that regulate behavior, not to mention the brain and the myelin, which require cholesterol for optimal function. I think I already mentioned this, but bile, which as you know is necessary for digestion and absorption of lipids, as well as utilization of fat-soluble vitamins A, D, K, and E, is also made from cholesterol. And lastly, cholesterol in our skin cells is the major building block for vitamin D. If you consider all the many functions and benefits of cholesterol, it's easy to see that circumventing the body's ability to produce this vital chemical through pharmaceutical intervention is highly detrimental to our health. You see, cholesterol isn't the problem. It's the body's defense against the real problem, which is acidosis. By artificially interfering with the body's ability to produce cholesterol, we're essentially disarming it and leaving it defenseless and exposed to damage. So if you're dealing with high cholesterol, you should be looking at the underlying causes that are triggering the body's defense response and then addressing them appropriately. Because the only meaningful way to lower cholesterol naturally is to heal the body's tissues and glands by removing the acidic waste that's breaking them down, and also by reducing our stress levels. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for watching, liking, and sharing.